for the May 6, 2025 Local Government Commission meeting. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Appreciate all the members in the audience, those virtually and in person. As a reminder, Jeff Poley is to my left. Jeff is the interim secretary of the commission. Appreciate all that he's been doing. We do have an open search for this position, and we continue to make good progress there. So excited to update you all on that when it's concluded. We've got 4 units on the UAL we'll talk about today. We've got item with Pilot Mountain, a reasonably big consent agenda as well. So in addition, we've asked the North Carolina Housing Finance Authority to be here to present on what it is they do so that they can fill in some details to make sure everyone understands the important role they play in making sure housing is affordable in our state, since they do end up before this commission over and over again. So with that, let's call the roll.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Cindy Aiken, Assistant General Counsel, and we shall start with Secretary Marshall.
Here.
In person. And Auditor Bolick.
Here.
Also in person, Secretary Wooten.
Here.
And likewise, Mr. Burns.
Here.
And Mr. Butler.
Here.
All of those in person. And we have Ms. Harvey.
Here.
Thank you. Participating virtually, also Councilwoman Hoffman.
Here.
Thank you. And Mr. Philbeck.
Here.
Thank you. Those 3 virtual, and Treasurer Briner.
Here.
In the room. No absences. Welcome all. For the staff today, as Treasurer Briner said, we have Jeff Poley, Interim Secretary, Jennifer Wimmer, Director of Debt Management, Kendra Boyle, Director of Fiscal Management, and MJ and Lindy back behind us, keeping track of our audio-visual. Quick housekeeping items. The meeting proceedings are being recorded and will be made available to the public pursuant to the department's recording of public meetings policy. We'll remind everyone, especially virtually, or unit representatives, if you will please identify yourself when speaking. And if you are online virtually, please mute yourself when you're not speaking. We will generally continue the recording even if there are some audio or visual glitches, so be reminded about conversations may be recorded. If you do in the room want to have a private conversation, please know that these mics are very sensitive and you may want to please step out into the hallway if you need to. The agenda is posted on our website. We may have some things sliding around in order today, and the treasurer will announce those changes during the meeting. We will continue to take votes by roll call, and without objection, members, your motions and seconds will be considered as yes votes unless you want to indicate otherwise during the roll call. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy. Let's please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the North Carolina flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I salute the flag of North Carolina and pledge to the old North State love, loyalty, and faith.
Thank you. So over to conflict of interest. Please take a moment to review the agenda. Commission members are reminded of your duty to avoid conflicts of interest. Does any member have an actual or potential conflict of interest with respect to any matter on the agenda?
I do, Mr. Treasurer. Yeah, the Duke University Health System matter in the consent agenda.
Okay. We will pull that
need
one off the consent agenda and vote on it separately. Are there any other conflicts of interest? Okay, thank you. Let's move to the minutes. But before we do that, just so you know, attachment B, which is Pilot Mountain, they have a conflict up until 2 p.m. So we're going to move them down the agenda until after 2 p.m. Everything else, we should proceed in order. So let's begin with the minutes. Any questions, concerns, or discussion on the minutes from April 1st? Motion from the Secretary of State for approval. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Mr. Butler with a second. Call the roll, please.
April LGC minutes, Marshall and Butler. Auditor Bolick.
Yes.
Thank you. Secretary Wooten.
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Ms. Harvey,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck. Treasurer Briner.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carried.
All right, thank you. Let's move to attachment A, which is the OPEB report, consistent showing of the units in front of us and their net OPEB liability. I particularly wanted to note that I've never seen a negative number on this page. And so I really appreciate that and respect that, because that is over and above the call of duty. So thank you, Raleigh Housing Authority, for that. There are others like Charlotte and Mecklenburg County who've done a great job of putting away monies against these large liabilities, and I'd encourage all our prospective borrowers to take this even more seriously than you already do. So we'll skip attachment B for now, and I'd call for the folks from North Carolina Housing Finance Agency to make their presentation. This is an information-only presentation. There's no vote required here. It's really, please, really for everyone's education to understand the particulars of how all this works, since we do often have debt issues sponsored by them in front of us. So over to you all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Appreciate it. My name is Will Perryhill. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Housing Finance Agency, and I'll let everyone else.
I'm Scott Farmer, the Executive Director of the Housing Finance Agency.
I'm Brett Warner, the CFO of the Housing Finance Agency.
So before y'all, I think you have some slides in a handout here. And so we're going to go through these rather quickly and then allow some time for questions should anyone have any. So on first slide, what is affordable housing? When we talk about housing affordability, all we're saying is that you're paying no more than 30% of your gross income for housing. If you're doing that, then you are considered cost burden. If you're paying more than half your gross income on housing, you're considered severely cost burden. When we talk about big A affordable housing, housing that's subsidized, which is almost all of the resources that the agency deals with, we're talking about affordability at an income band at 80% of the area median income as set by HUD or below. And so with the exception of our home buyer products, almost all the resources that we have at the Housing Finance Agency are targeted at 80% area median income or below. Next slide, please. And so you can see here 3 out of every 5 lower income North Carolina household is considered cost burden. Next slide, please. And this is not a metro or a rural issue. This is an everywhere issue. There's not a single county in which there's not a shortage of housing or a cost burden household. Next slide, please. Many of y'all are familiar with the Bowen study that was recently released by the NC Chamber, the NC Home Builders Association, and the North Carolina Realtors. And what it shows is the need is vast. It shows that we have a shortage of 760,000 homes over the next 5 years across all income bands and of all types. So demand far outweighs supply, and we've got a long way to go. Next slide, please. So who are we? North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, we are a self-supporting public agency. We're structured flexibly so that our programs and our products help respond to changing real estate market conditions. We're governed by a 13-member board of directors, 4 appointed by the governor, 4 by the speaker, 4 by the president pro tem, and then those 12 members elect a 13th at-large member. We have 143 employees, mostly here in Raleigh, and we are designed and built to sell private activity bonds. So as such, by statute, our finances are kept separate from that of the states. We're independently rated by the rating agencies. Our debts and obligations never become that of the states and vice versa. And all of our work is done through a network of local partners, whether that be a small faith-based nonprofit all the way up to some of the largest financial institutions like Bank of America or Truist. Next slide, please. So we have 5 main lines of business. And today, for this purpose of this presentation, we're only going to talk about our home ownership programs and our rental production programs, as those are the only 2 areas that appear before the local government commission. But we were established to create home ownership opportunities. We also do foreclosure prevention, home repair, supportive housing, and rental production. Next slide, please. So agency production last year, we financed just shy of 12,000 homes and apartments worth $2.7 billion, and we supported 23,300 jobs. Next slide, please. And our work is in all 100 counties throughout the state. So there's not a county that we have not done work in. Next slide, please. So mortgage revenue bonds, if you want to just go ahead and click these transitions. I'm sorry, I forgot to remove these when I sent the presentation over. And click again and one more time. Thank you. So as I said, we were built and designed to sell private activity bonds. Private activity bonds may be used for single-family mortgage production, and so we're going to talk about them called mortgage revenue bonds. Mortgage revenue bonds are financing tools used by state housing finance agencies to finance mortgages for low and moderate income first-time home buyers and qualifying veterans. Our rates are typically below market. HFAs and other state and local entities can sell private activity bonds. And mortgage revenue bonds are dependent on the state's available volume cap. Every state and every territory and the District of Columbia created a housing finance agency to take advantage of this program. They all have a similar mission, but all are structured slightly differently. Next slide, please. And you can click through these. I think there's 3 transitions here. And so there are some restrictions on how MRBs can be used. Primarily, Congress restricts mortgages financed by MRBs to first-time home buyers and veterans who earn no more than 115% of the area median income, and then that the homes purchased with a mortgage revenue bond must not cost more than 90% of the average area purchase price. And these limits are set by HUD and the IRS. Next slide, please. So what does this look like as it comes before the local government commission? So last year, North Carolina received a volume allocation of $1.35 billion of private activity bonds in 2024. The North Carolina Tax Reform Allocation Committee, which is made up of the Treasurer, the Secretary of Commerce, and the Governor's Budget Director, allocate all private activity bond volume within the state of North Carolina. So the allocations last year, as you can see, 41% went to multifamily housing, 18% went to industrial projects, 4% to student loan, to the North Carolina Educational Assistance Authority, and 37% to single-family housing as well. Why are we such a large proportion of this? This really is the only financing source available for affordable housing production at scale. And last year, we issued $1.2 billion in bonds, and that, should be $935 million of which were tax-exempt bonds. Next slide, please. So our single-family production last year, just at a glance, we helped almost 5,100 North Carolina families purchase their home. We closed over $1.1 billion worth of lending. The average sales price was $239,000. The average household income was $69,000, and we closed loans in 96 out of 100 counties. Next slide, please. And that family is actually an actual North Carolina home buyer family. So the steps for which a bond goes to market here, the North Carolina Tax Reform Allocation Committee allocates all bond cap authority. We go through a number of partner consultations with our financial advisor, bond counsel, underwriters, the rating agencies, and with the LGC staff here. Once we know that we are going to be going to market with a bond sale, then that has to be approved by our board of directors as well. The public has an opportunity to weigh in through a public hearing, and then the final step is it appears before the LGC, and then the governor signs it. Next slide, please. So why is this important? Well, throughout decades, wage growth has trailed behind housing cost growth. But what we saw is when COVID hit, this went into hyperdrive. And the American dream has never been so out of reach for home buyers, first-time home buyers especially. So that gap between median wage and the median home price is at the highest point it's been in our lifetimes. Next slide, please. And these are the 2 products that we offer. Again, mentioned that we work through a network of partners throughout the state. We offer these 2 mortgage products. They are offered through a network of 100 partner lenders throughout the state with over 2,000 individual loan officers. They originate those loans for us. And what it provides sets it apart is not only is our rate typically lower than a 30-year fixed mortgage on the market, but you can also get up to $15,000 down payment assistance. Next slide. So moving on to our rental program. So the two areas in which we use bonds, single-family production and also rental production on the multifamily side. We've helped over the course of our 51 years, about 145,000 households purchase their first home. We've also financed the construction or rehabilitation of almost 130,000 apartment homes that same time period, valued at more than $15.8 billion. Next slide, please. So y'all may have heard of something called the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, sometimes called LIHTC. We like to refer to it as the less wonky term, the housing credit. The housing credit is the main driver of affordable rental production in the United States. So as it sounds, it is a tax credit that provides a tax incentive to construct or rehabilitate affordable rental housing to eligible development entities under the state's qualified allocation plan. Like I said, virtually all affordable rental housing in the United States is financed through the housing credit. It was created in the 1986 tax reform package. Congress doubled down on the credit in the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, and it's operated independently by each state HFA in the U.S. territories and the D.C., who are the allocating agencies. It leverages the power of the private market, and there are two types, 9% credit and 4% credit. And we're going to try not to go too far in the weeds here, but we have to go through the 9% credit to understand what the 4% credit is. So next slide, please. On the 9% side, so every state and territory receives a per capita allocation of 9% credits. That for 2025 is right at $3 per capita per state. The credit generates equity that covers up to 70% of the development costs. There are IRS-imposed deadlines on construction progress. Local governments, so because it's sort of the only game in town, because it is the main financing vehicle, other federal resources, state resources, local resources are designed to strap onto it and be a force multiplier for it. So whether you want to call it soft debt, gap financing, subordinate loans, you'll hear all of those terms. All of those things are layered into the finance stack to achieve greater affordability or make a deal pencil in a certain area. Local housing trust funds, often one of their main uses will be for gap financing on LIHTC properties or housing credit properties. So you may see that. And Scott likes to call them lasagnas of financing when you look at the finance stacks, right? Call them a layer cake of financing, either way. And in exchange for that tax credit, the owner agrees that the rents will be kept affordable for households making up to 80% AMI or below for the next 30 years. Next slide. 9% deals will never come before the LGC, but you need that context to understand 4% deals, or what we call bond deals, which will come before the local government commission. Whereas the tax credit is the main driver in a 9% deal, the tax-exempt bonds are the main driver in a bond deal or 4% deal. So the idea here is that if you spend 50% of your development costs or cover 50% of your development costs with tax-exempt bonds, that triggers automatically the entrance of 4% credit in it. 4% credit generates roughly 40% of the equity within a development. Local governments and other entities may provide gap financing. There is no state level resource for 4% deals, but local governments will frequently add gap financing to these deals. Rents also must be kept affordable for households making up to 80% of the area median income. And generally, the agency is the issuer of last resort. You will most often see these issued by local government entities or local public housing authorities. We're the issuer if there is no local issuer, or if it is what we call a portfolio transaction, where we have multiple deals bundled together across county lots. And you may recall, we've done several in the last several years, USDA portfolio transactions where there's an acquisition rehab of older USDA multifamily properties. Next slide, please. So the rental approval process, again, everything begins with NC-TRAC. All 9% and 4% awards must be approved by the Tax Reform Allocation Committee. The Qualified Allocation Plan, which under the Internal Revenue Code is sort of the rules by which sponsors compete for these credits, that has to be approved by NC-TRAC and signed by the governor as well. All proposals are underwritten and vetted by our staff. And then if we have subordinate loans within a property, within a deal, our board must approve those. And then the final step is that it goes, that 4% deals go before approval before the LGC. Next slide, please. And that's it. That's our presentation. It's fast and furious, so if you,
Usually takes an hour.
yeah.
We did ask the Housing Finance Authority to come this time because last month we had a housing bond with Elizabeth City. It created a bunch of questions. Today we have multifamily for the Raleigh Housing Authority. And later this month, I'm not sure which day, they're selling 300 million of multifamily, single-family bonds. So this would be a good education. Obviously, feel free to answer any questions, ask any questions.
Question,
Strong.
Dave Bullock, State Auditor. Just one, where's 30% number come from? How is that derived?
That's, so it's a HUD definition, it's a policy definition, it is, it's widely accepted across housing policy. So if you go and apply for a mortgage, those underwriting guidelines are typically going to be that your debt to income ratio is kept beneath 30% of your gross income. It's just a widely accepted housing standard.
And then I had a question also about the sort of mix of housing. You know, what works? Townhouses, standalone single residences, or apartments? Because it seems like there's a mix, but what, in your opinion, it's what you do. What's the solution?
Well,
Give us the wave the magic wand, fix it for us.
Mr. Treasurer. I'm a buffet guy. I don't know if you can tell that by looking at me. It's an all of the above. Yeah, all of the above answer, I think. We've glossed over it, but that Bowen study shows that we don't have a housing shortage in any one area. We need housing of all types, whether that be apartments, townhomes, duet homes, trio homes, our single family homes, all the way up to executive homes. We have a shortage of all types of housing. We have a shortage of all housing that's available at all income levels. I like to say the housing market is sort of like a game of musical chairs. People with means are always going to find a seat. So just like everything else, people of lower income more acutely feel a housing shortage than people with means. We have an additional, I think, situation in the for sale market is that, we have way more people than we have homes. We're the third fastest growing state, which is good news. Bad news is we're the third fastest growing state. And so we do have this shortage. Demand exceeds supply. Folks that have very low mortgages are not moving out of their homes. And then we also are at a record number of folks that have their mortgages completely paid off. So in that game of musical chairs, there's been some chairs taken away and some people aren't getting up when the music plays. So I think, the answer is all of the above.
And I would add that I think the important thing is that we are building at all of those types in all of those places. Our focus, the rental development program is focused on apartments. We see some mixes of townhouses. A lot of times that's driven by the site and the location. So the local governments are going to drive what the building type and building style may be, as well as the availability of the land. We're promoting density where we can with our rental development programs. On the single family, it's almost exclusively individual houses on individual lots. We do see more and more townhomes starting to pop up as part of those programs as well. But to Will's point, it's at all income points. As long as the interest rates, if you're in a house right now and you've got a mortgage rate that's below 4, you're not going anywhere in the foreseeable future. So that creates this backlog of folks that want to buy a house, but there's no houses to buy. We've been very surprised, quite frankly, that the appetite for our first mortgage product has remained as high as it has been, because one of the issues for us is the supply of homes at that price point. But our average purchase price continues to be around, $250 or less? 239, yeah. So So it continues to remain relatively low. So that tells you that outside of those major metropolitan areas where you're not going to find a house in Wake County for under $300,000 on a regular basis, it's going to be those resales because of new construction. Now, that's one of the things we didn't touch on either. One of the other drivers for why these costs are going up is construction costs have gone up, so therefore mortgages are going up. Our dollars are not going as far as they have been. So our appetite both on the single family and multifamily side has been increasing while the resources are remaining pretty stagnant.
Yes, I guess that leads to a final question. I'm sorry to ask so many questions, but in terms of the policy driver of renting versus building equity in something, because that is a generational wealth issue, right? Is as you own land, and most people who are, that don't have, say, a big inheritance or whatever, they're starting their family, their career, I think you mentioned the American dream, that starts with, traditionally owning a home, and then that evolves into maybe buying commercial property or whatever other investments you may have. What drives that policy decision across the state in terms of where to focus, or do you know? I mean, you still what I'm saying? As okay, we're going to focus on a bunch of apartment complexes. But that's not building wealth with the renters. If you're renting, you obviously you have shelter, right? And it's clean, affordable, maybe good location for you for your employment, but you're not building equity, right?
Right.
So what drives that policy mix?
Much of what drives that is the resources that are available. So, for example, the housing credit program is strictly for rental. So that's going to drive that rental production through our programs. And I would say that one of the reasons why the affordable rental is so critical is so that you can build that wealth and be prepared to move into homeownership. That's one of the goals with the program is to create. So if you're spending 50 to 60% of your income every month to cover your rent, it's going to be hard to set aside that savings to ever be able to purchase that first home. So it's a balance of things. The interesting thing to me has always been how close we are to the same percentage of rental and home ownership even after 40 years. That percentage really generally runs 65% home ownership, 65% home ownership, 35% rental. And it hasn't moved off of that much way or the other. What we are seeing right now is folks are waiting longer to buy that first home because they don't have the opportunity, because it's taking longer to build up that down payment or to access those other resources, or just simply the lack of housing. So I think it is a balance. It's not a policy decision as such as it is what resources are available for folks to then be able to acquire that first home. I think not everybody is cut out to be a homeowner, but a lot of folks do have that desire. But then on the backside of that, we also see folks that are aging and they choose to go back to the rental side. There's a number of folks that have moved into our senior properties over the years where they are downsizing from owning a single family home. It's a balanced ecosystem. So whenever somebody moves out, somebody's ready to move in to that home. So we really need a balance of both.
Thank you.
I've been on this board for a long time, and I really, really have admired what you all do and how you give a start to people, just like we've been talking about. I have a question, and it came up to my mind in looking at the Raleigh Housing Authority matter that we have on later. And it talks about a certain percentage, a certain number of 2-3 singles for 30% below, and a certain for 60% below and 80% below. Do you have guidelines for that? I mean, there's very little on the lower end, and it seems to me that maybe there's more needed in that, but I'm not, studying all the stuff that the city is looking at. So are there guidelines that you all issue or suggestions that you make, or is this totally up to the local unit?
Yes, ma'am. So it's a little bit of both. So with changes to Section 42 a few years ago, it used to be everything was at 60 and below. We've always had in our qualified allocation plan, we encourage deeper income targeting. So we want to be able to serve some of those folks at 30, 40, 50, and 60%. With the income averaging, what they allowed properties to do is they now can do that on their own without any other requirements. So if you want to go up to 80%, then you have to balance that out with some units at 30 and 40%, so that the property as a whole still comes out to an average of 60% of area median income. So it's a balancing point. But I think from a policy standpoint, the real challenge is, if you'll look at some of the Bowen information and other studies, the most need on the rental side is that under 30. But quite frankly, you can't operate a unit at 30% of area median income. So then it's going to require either subsidy for the renter or for the operations. So you just have to decide where that's going to occur. And that's why being able to income average, you can then create that spread. So effectively, the debt is going to be carried by all of the residents in some form or fashion, but more of that subsidy will need to go, will be going to help to assist with the rents on the 30%. But you need a balance. You can't do, there's no way you can do 100% at 30 without a heavy subsidy. But you can do when it's balanced out between 80 and 30. That's an important tool that was added a number of years ago to the Section 42.
These properties that are apartment buildings, are they generally developer managed or management companies or?
They're all professionally managed. Some are owned, some developers have their own management companies. Others use third-party management, but they're all professional management companies that operate within the tax credit program. We require that they be certified, that they have gone through training, that they manage other tax credit properties. It's this is an IRS program, and the IRS is going to be involved with these things for 15 years. So you need to have qualified folks. The toughest job in this process is the property management, to be able to keep it leased up and to be able to manage the requirements of all the various funding programs involved.
I have a follow-up. It's not really a follow-up. It's in a different zone, and I don't know if you all are into this. There is I'm seeing a growing need for independent living for either people on the autism spectrum, people with other mental assistance needed, who need a stable environment, could live on their own. I have I have some friends who have children in this category, and they worry obsessively about what's going to happen to them when they're not there to provide. And these adults want to live on their own. They can do jobs, provided they stay stable. Are you all into any of that kind of housing finance for that type of facility?
Yes, ma'am. That's one of those other three things that the other three activities we had. One of those is supportive housing, and we were able to assist in those situations. I will also say with the housing credit program, we also set aside up to 10% of those units are set aside for a person with disabilities or those facing homelessness, to try and provide those resources in a more integrated setting. But yes, ma'am, we've done a number of standalone apartments or permanent supportive housing for persons with special needs. So be happy to share more about that if you have a particular interest in that space.
I have some friends that do. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Quick question about, I was listening to the auditor's question kind of about policy decisions and the kind of mindset of home ownership. And I wonder if, you all have access to, I'm sure somebody has studied it, now with regard to that concept with the younger generation. Totally non-empirical. My kids are both under 30, nieces and nephews who live from LA to Miami, none of whom have this goal of home ownership because they're not thinking about marriage yet. They want to go to Cabo every year like they did when we paid for them to go in college. And so they'd rather spend more time traveling than spending money, so they just have a different mindset with regard, to home ownership. And I wonder if you all have access to those kind of steps as you're doing this and looking at kind of generational differences in thoughts about home ownership and how that plays into kind of what your future looks like in doing this work.
I think a lot of what we have is anecdotal as well. You read a lot of articles, and we see it playing out in the fact that, a lot of our marketing and advertising for our home ownership programs, it's trying to identify that group of folks. I've got 3 kids in that same zone. My oldest bought his first house 2 years ago. The other 2, I'm not sure if they ever will, because it's just a different sort of mindset for them. I think eventually they will get there, but I think it's later than most of us in this room probably thought about it. And I think it's part of it is generational, but it's also the environment that they live and work in now is very different than what we were in. But again, we've been buoyed by the fact that the demand for our program has never been higher on the home ownership front. So there's still plenty of folks that are interested in buying their first home and being part of that. Our concern is being able to continue to offer those resources going forward, considering where price points are and the fact, quite frankly, we can't build our way out of this problem fast enough. We're not building enough houses on a regular basis.
I think that last point is important. And I think we're far more likely to see people in their 20s who are working 3 jobs to pay the rent that they have to afford than we are spending their money, no offense, Mr. Wooten, but spending their money in Cabo. I've got kids too. My 23-year-old's about to graduate with his master's degree, and he's worried about where his job's going to be because all of the programs he was going to work for have now been slashed by, well, I won't go into that, but so they're more worried about the future and what their jobs are going to be, and the concept of buying something that takes 30 years to pay off doesn't enter into their vocabulary because they're more worried about how are they going to pay the rent next week. So that's what we as a government need to keep in mind. Those are the people who are not buying houses. Yes, housing is a great investment, but getting people shelter, getting people a place to live, to have their mail delivered to them so that they can put an application in for a job, that they have a place that they're living so their employer knows where they are. That's what we're trying to do at the lower end of the spectrum. So it's, as a local office holder, those are the people that are being left behind. And you, like you said, you can't finance a project where everybody in it's below 30%. Nobody's going to invest in that. So we end up with the Rustbus project, which is supposed to have 25 or 40 units, and now it's not going to have any units because it didn't pencil out. Well, it's on us to figure out a way to pencil it out so that we can start putting people in housing, to me. But that's a venting more than a question, sorry.
What's your bond rating?
The current bond rate, 6.75. And you get 15,000.
On rating.
Oh, bond rating, sorry, AA plus. Yep. The only reason we're not at AAA is because it requires more capital for us to get up there. And then once you're there, you got to stay there. If you were to drop, it would have, a negative. And there's no pricing difference for us at AA versus AAA. So we could go AAA, but we just haven't.
And we have very comparable bond counsel in the back of the room that keeps us out of trouble.
Good.
That's what he tells you.
Is there any coordination between the housing authority and we do these public-private partnerships that have some housing, they call it workforce housing or affordable housing, or a percentage of the units are set aside? Is that coordinated with y'all in any way, or is it strictly up to the local unit of government to determine the percentage of the units?
So everything through the housing credit program is a public-private partnership. So there are, those are private companies that are investing in those. So it would be the large banks, it would be the insurance companies. The workforce housing, we consider this workforce housing because it is serving those at or below 80% of area median income. If you're talking about a standalone public-private partnership, I'd have to know what it is to know whether or not it was something. That's really our involvement is in these type of developments. There have been a few. There's been some teacher housing that's been built in partnership with the State Employees Credit Union Foundation that we know of, and we've sent them that way because everything that goes through us has to be for general public use, so it has to be available to everybody, not for specific employers. But yes, so I'm not aware of anything that's occurring outside of the housing credit program.
I guess one question on the 30% income limitation. That's fundamentally what you pay. The other side of that is what you get. I guess a question for you about housing inventory. As I understand it, the median house in this country continues to get exponentially larger in square footage. I imagine that's not true of what you're financing. Do you have a sense for what you get, so to speak?
Right. So we have, within the housing credit program in our design standards, we have a minimum requirement in terms of square footage. And that generally is really just what's necessary to meet the accessibility requirements because certain percent of the units have to be fully accessible units. So I think that's from as small as 660 square feet for a studio apartment up to around 1,200, 1,300 maybe for a 4-bedroom. But they're not adding a lot of extra square footage to these units. We're trying to keep it as efficient. What we rate and score on is the efficient use of resources. So you're doing better. Our job is to try and take this and go as far as we can because we'd like to say yes more than no. So it's, and we're always constantly looking at that to see where we can sort of push and pull to pull back on some things while also maintaining the quality. I mean, one of the, I think the hallmarks of this program is the fact that we treat this as a 30-year investment. These are good real estate transactions. When I first came to the agency, that's one of the things that was imparted on me is these are real estate transactions first. They need to be in good locations. They need to be well underwritten. They need to be well designed because they're going to be around for 30 years and plus. So, and we've got properties that are coming back in for their second cycle of credits so that they can get upgraded. They can do the rehab. They can replace the roof, the HVAC systems, and those kind of things. And that to me is a testament to how well designed the program is, that it's, they're not coming back in year 10 or year 15. These are 25 and 30 years that we're finally seeing them cycle back in for additional credits.
Treasurer, I have just one more question and just a yes or no answer. And are y'all involved in any way in the housing project that's looking at Elizabethtown, North Carolina? Yes or no?
No.
Good.
The single family development that you're talking about? No, sir, we're not.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since we're after 2:00, do we have the folks from Pilot Mountain on the line? Mayor Cockerham, Mayor Pro Tem Kiger, and on down the line?
They're on the line, you can join us virtually.
Okay. So since they're on, let's go ahead and go to attachment B. Before we get to attachment B and what Jennifer and Kendra are going to present there, I just want to provide a little bit of voiceover from my perspective, and I welcome the auditor's comments as well. We included in your packet an article from the local paper around our involvement and our staff's involvement in helping Pilot Mountain get to a better place. We have sought to stay out of the limelight as much as possible. We've sought to help Pilot Mountain get to a better place as much as possible. And so we generally have not wanted to comment publicly on these matters. We obviously have a matter in front of us that needs to be discussed publicly, and so that's why we're doing it. But suffice it to say that our teams have spent many hours trying to get Pilot Mountain back on the right track. We appreciate all of their efforts in doing this, and so happy to have them with us today to discuss one piece of that plan. But that's some overview that I wanted to provide everyone so that you knew we've been deeply involved here, but are seeking no limelight for doing so. Anything you wanted to add?
No, I just think, ultimately, I think this body, from what I can tell, just having been here, wants to help support local municipalities as much as possible, up to local leadership to chart their own path. We want to be more of a support as opposed, sort of, to use my old line, more a jar of honey, not a hammer. But, there obviously were some concerns, and we want to do everything we can to help town of Pilot Mountain succeed.
So with that, over to Jennifer and Kendra.
Good afternoon. So the miscellaneous action item that is before you for the town of Pilot Mountain is a loan amendment. Not only the town officials, but with help from our fiscal staff, as well as representative from the League of Municipalities, has contacted DEQ, which the town has 3 SRF, state revolving loans, with currently. In looking at their finances and looking towards the future of getting in a better financial situation, DEQ has approved at their end a 2-year principal payment deferral and extension thereof of the loan term, so the maturity date at 2 years extension. The loans that are included are in the information. You will notice that it already has a 0% interest rate. So this action would actually just allow the town a little bit more flexibility in the near term of making financial decisions They are not getting these loans forgiven, but just a little bit of leeway in the short term. So that is all about the loan itself, and I'll turn it over to Kendra for any explanation.
I think that I'm really just going to let this be for the unit to speak to what has transpired and what was brought to our attention that they may need to put in place some improvements to their financial condition. So I don't know who on the town side was going to speak to this.
Yeah, this is Mayor Cochran. I'm happy to kind of tee things up for you. That, as the treasurer alluded to, we did meet with he and the auditor several months ago and talked about the town's financial well-being, and this is part of an overall plan to restore that. Our Board of Commissioners discovered that the budget we were presented with and adopted back at the beginning of the fiscal year didn't really match up with the reality. And since we made that discovery in October, we've been working rapidly to revamp our staff, our training, and our internal controls. Our board's been working with former auditor Beth Wood and Sharon Edmondson, formerly of this commission as secretary, to create a budget to get us to the end of the fiscal year. We've done that. We've also instituted a freeze on hiring, overtime, and discretionary spending. Part of our plan has been to surplus property, and we've made some progress on that side. The only loans that we're looking to defer are these with the DQ, and I want to thank them for their cooperation. We've been working with Ms. Edmondson to develop a budget for the next fiscal year, although we're requesting a delay in payment so that we can get back on our feet and rebuild our fund balance. We will need to, we're aware that we need to show that our revenues can outpace expenditures. So we plan to cut back where we can while still providing essential services to our citizens. We've worked creatively with the local nonprofit to turn over operations of a recreation center, and we're working on a deal to do that right now so that it can still provide service to our community, but the town won't be responsible for staffing and operating the center. And I'm glad to answer any questions you may have. Our Mayor Pro Tem, Donna Kiger, is on the call. Sharon Edmondson is on the call. And Andy Goodall, who's acting as our finance officer, is on the call as well. He and our town manager have been working to get our grants and everything back in compliance.
Any questions from commission members? Yes.
How much are you out of whack? And tell me about the misappropriated funds. That's the elephant in the room, so.
Sure.
Mayor, I can speak to that too. We are investigating that, Madam Secretary.
Okay.
And I've retained the former Auditor Wood to assist the town with that. And so she's doing a complete look back.
Okay.
And that's out in the public domain, so I'm not saying anything that I don't think's already in the public domain. Is that fair to say, Mr. Mayor?
Sure, exactly. We don't know the extent of the misappropriation, how far that goes back, but as far as what the town is dealing with, that's where the surplus property comes into play. We have sold and closed on 2 pieces of property to get the town back to where we can tread water, but we have a third larger piece of property that's estimated to bring in about $1 million conservatively. That will go toward rebuilding the town's fund balance and repaying those misappropriated funds that were allocated to the rescue squad in Pilot Mountain and some other misappropriated funds as well.
So the sale of these 3 properties will not bring you back to where you need to be. And this 2-year abatement with these DEQ loans, will that be adequate? How much are they foregoing in the 2-year period?
I believe Ms. Edmondson can probably speak to that amount, but as far as the deferred amounts, but the sale of the third piece of property would get us back to where we need to be as far as all of our outstanding misappropriated funds that need to be restored.
And then you also intend to bring up your fund balance.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I don't know if there's anything here that tells us how far out they are on fund balance.
We don't have their fiscal year, their most current fiscal year audited financial statements yet. They should be submitted soon, the next week, I believe, is what I was told.
That's the 2023 audit that's going to be submitted in the next week. They are behind.
Yes.
And are there multiple this misappropriation occurring over multiple years that we're looking back at other prior audits?
I believe the investigation that's within the state auditor's purview is going back multiple years. The one that where we're concerned as the town is with these most recent misappropriations. That seems to be that's where we need to restore the we need to restore those funds first and foremost. But we believe what happened essentially is that the town manager spent money outside of the budget over the course of many years, possibly, and that eventually caught up to him, and that's when he started using funds that did not belong to the town.
If I may.
Well, if there's an audit pending, there's a lot that can't be.
Yeah, so I think what we are trying to focus on is the path forward. Because looking backward is complicated, messy, and subject to an investigation that's incomplete.
Yep.
So we have asked and we have received a couple iterations of a plan for the go forward to make sure that there are no future issues. Part of that plan is the sale of surplus property. Part of that plan is material reductions in expense. And we have been working with the town with those things. They are not fully complete, but I think we feel like with the deferral of these loans and the success they've had so far in those properties and will need to have with a third property, there's a viable plan there.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission in person or online?
Can I say one other thing? Yeah, I also want to thank the League of Municipalities. With their program, which was described to us here, maybe even been before the first of the year. I think I was visiting, but their program to assist local municipalities on controls and processes, procedures, ways of handling day-to-day finance work. Sharon, thanks for your work on that.
You're welcome. And I will say I'm focused right now on getting a budget put together with a great deal of input from the department heads. And I will say this is to a department head have told me this is the first time they've been involved in budget development, which I think was a real boost to the morale for one thing, but it also is indicative of what some of the problems were in the budget development in the past. So as soon as we get that put together and on a path to get that adopted, then we will start the official training through the AIM program, which is the program that Auditor Bullock is referring to. But right now, our main priority is getting this budget put together and getting the bookkeeping caught up so that we can get the audits completed.
Seeing no other questions, we need a vote to approve this action item.
Yeah, sure. This is Cindy Aiken. Just to cross all our Ts and dot our Is, it came to my attention that just to make it official, we've asked through staff, have the governing board at their next official meeting, which I believe is next week or the one after, to just do an official resolution, because at this point we have a letter from the mayor, but our internal rules and procedures ask for the governing board specifically to request amendments. So I'm just going to recommend that, conditioned on receiving that resolution, which will be forthcoming, you move to do the amendment.
So part of any motion.
Yes,
it will
thank you.
Register as Cindy's condition. I hear a motion to approve this loan amendment.
I'll
approve. Mr. Burns, second.
Second, subject to receiving the appropriate resolution.
Correct. Thank you. Please call the roll.
All right, so for Pilot Mountain loan amendments, motion Burns, Marshall second, with the condition of receiving the governing board's resolution. And let's see, Auditor Bullock.
Yes.
Thank you. Secretary Wooten.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Butler.
Aye.
Thanks. Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hoffman.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Treasurer Briner.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr.
Treasurer, this is Mike Philbeck. May I ask one question before they leave?
Yes.
I looked up their budget ordinance for this year online. It's like $3.1 million. What do you anticipate it might be for the coming fiscal year?
We're trying to trim there's only a few places in the town's budget where we can trim. Police is one, and obviously Parks and Rec are another. Community development is another one. So we're trying to trim anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 from the budget for next fiscal year. So that's where our goal is going in.
I take it that is helped by these 3 loan deferrals.
It is, but we need to make sure that, like I said earlier, we're outpacing revenues or outpacing expenditures so that we're able to build up our fund balance and eventually make these payments in a couple of years, have a sound foundation for that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, team from Pilot Mountain. We appreciate you working with us and getting onto a better track than you have been. I will say for other municipalities out there that find themselves in difficult situations, I would encourage you to reach out to us sooner rather than later. There are many different resources available to help you get on a better path. There are 1,100 municipalities in this state. Pilot Mountain is not the only one that needs help. So we stand ready to assist. Please let us know. So moving on to attachment C, the UAL units. We've got 3 units and 4 issues there. We have members from each of those towns in attendance virtually, so they'll be available for any questions. Norwood, Stanley, and Wilkesboro. Over to Jennifer and Kendra.
So continuing on what the treasurer's remarks on having units reach out, we have some members of the fiscal team who work directly with the units that are on the unit assistance list. So to bring the compliance matters before you, these entities, and we'll start with Norwood, they entered into a fleet management lease. And because of the change in the statutes that required a lower dollar threshold for LGC approval, as well as vehicles that were included for LGC approval, between the employees on Kendra's staff that work with these units, as well as self-reporting at the unit level. When they disclose that, we are bringing these compliance leases not only to be adequate and lawful, but to note that these units are working themselves into a better position and financial growth. So the town of Norwood has already accepted and is in use of these public vehicles. The amount of the lease is $360,000. But again, this particular lease, we're just asking for your approval to bring them into compliance.
So, in the town of Norwood, you have the write-up on why they were put on the unit assistance list. And this most recent time, it was mainly to internal control issues. So, and that was based on fiscal year '23. Fiscal year '24 has come around and we've been provided with audited financial statements and we've seen the improvement in those internal control issues. They now have their day-to-day financial records are being kept current, the reconciliations are completed and reviewed each month. They have implemented some segregation of duties, things that have all seemingly improved their internal controls. This is an issuance that is, as Jennifer said, police vehicles that would be serviced from the general fund, and there's no concerns related to the financial condition of their general fund. So those are the key points that I thought you all needed to know before you make a decision on this unit.
Any questions or concerns on Norwood? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the Norwood bulk purchase.
So moved.
Secretary Wooten.
Second.
Auditor Bullock. Call the roll, please.
For the town of Norwood's lease of vehicles, Wooten Bolick, Secretary Marshall.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Butler.
Aye.
Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hoffman.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Thank you. And Treasurer.
Aye. Okay, motion approved. Over to the town of Stanley.
The town of Stanley is requesting this financing for a new fire truck. It is for a replacement of a truck that's over 40 years old. As a lot of the other units, they ordered this truck in 2022 because of the time frame it takes for fire trucks to be delivered. So they are getting ready to acquire this $637,000 fire truck for Home Trust Bank, a term of 10 years and an interest rate of 4.88%. And I'll turn it over to Kendra.
So the town of Stanley appeared on the 2023 unit assistance list because at the time it was compiled in October, we did not have 23 financial statements. So we placed them on the list. We have had multiple communications with the unit. The reason for them being so late was that in 2017, they had a software issue where the way that it was accruing their receivables was not totally accurate. Well, the audit opinion is that the financial statements are materially correct. So from the period of 17 to 2023, when they got to 2023, well, now they're no longer materially correct. And the issue had to be dealt with. And therefore, that took time once this was identified as being material. And we were able to get their 23 audited financial statements in March of this year. Those financial statements revealed to us that their main issues were this receivable glitch in their software. That prevented them from having their reconciliations timely, resulted in the late audit, and those things have been rectified at this point. I've talked with the auditor, and they have done about 90% of the field work for the 24 audit report, and feel very confident that they're going to be able to get that 24 audit report issued and able to get them on track for 25. The reason that it was so important that the work be done for the 23 to get them materially correct is so that they could have an unmodified opinion on their financials. Otherwise, the unit would have to have a modification for these accounts receivables, and it was important to get that taken care of. So that was information that I wanted you all to have on this unit.
Mr. Craig. I've just got a question about if they're aware that the software is not reconciling with the proper subledger, why is that continuing to happen? Can't you program it or recognize that and redirect the accounting in the right direction?
You possibly, we do have the unit on the line if you'd like them to address that as to why it was so long.
I'm just curious as to why it must be a more complicated fix than it seems to my lay eyes.
the finance director, Kevin Heaney, is attending virtually. He's self-muted.
Mr. Haney, did you hear the question?
Yes, sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. Yes, we are working with a software vendor to get all of those rectified, and it's going to involve some programming to get rid of the old balances. We are working on that with them now, and that should be done shortly.
And that would apply that fix going forward as well for future budgets?
Yes, sir. The fix has already been made to where it's posting correctly now.
Great. Thank you for answering my question.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the town of Stanley? Okay, entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Butler,
I'll second.
second Mr. Burns. Call the roll, please.
Town of Stanley, Butler and Burns. Secretary Marshall?
Aye.
Auditor Bollitt?
Aye.
Secretary Wooten? Ms. Harvey?
Aye.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hoffman?
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
Treasurer Bryan?
Aye.
Ms. Hoffman, we like you're a new assistant.
She's not.
I just adopted this. Adopted this little 14-week-old 10 days ago. So forgive me.
No forgiveness needed.
That carries. Let's move on to the Wilkesboro matters. Unless there's objection, we'll consider them jointly.
The town of Wilkesboro has two items. They are the two different leases. One is a current lease, one is the compliance lease, both of which they're just rotating off rolling stock on an annual basis. So they do have different interest rates based on the lease agreements for the vehicles, but I will turn it over to Kendra for anything that.
So the town of Wilkesboro is on the unit assistance list due to some financial concerns in their general fund as well as their water and sewer fund. Their fund balance available as percentage of expenditures was 9.23% for fiscal year '24. And our threshold for expenditures at this level is around 34%. So in recognition of the fact that this fund balance, this percentage needs to go up, the unit responded to that by not appropriating any fund balance in fiscal year '25. The reason that the fund balance had dropped so much and had gotten to the level that it was is that they were funding a lot of capital projects with their fund balance. So they've recognized that that's not sustainable. They've not done that in fiscal year '25. In fiscal year '26, they're having a revaluation. So they expect that their property tax revenue will increase. Then they'll have to make a decision in regards to how much of that will be used for increasing their fund balance. And then also in their water and sewer fund, they were not charging a rate that would allow them to cover their operating expenses, and they have put in place a plan to gradually increase those rates. They chose not to increase the rates for the year that will be affected by the revaluation, as to not have a double whammy on their citizens. But they do have a plan in place to continue that growth of their water and sewer fund to a level that will helpfully eliminate the concern. We've seen the improvement in what they've been doing and feel confident that their plan of action will produce the desired results.
Any questions or concerns on the Wilkesboro matters?
I just have one, that the debt per capita and debt to assessed valuation ratios, they're different on each of the matters. Which one shows the final?
So the larger one takes into the account, the approval of the first one as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Hearing no other questions, I'll entertain a motion for both. Secretary Wooten, second.
Second.
Secretary Marshall.
Two matters for Wilkesboro, Wooten and Marshall. Auditor Bullock.
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Butler.
Aye.
Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Councilwoman Hoffman.
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Mayor Briner.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move over to attachment D, which is the consent agenda. As a reminder, we are going to treat the Duke University Health System matter separately due to a conflict there. Over to Jennifer for any questions or comments on the consent agenda.
The expected, I just have one addition, and that is to, on the Greenville Utilities Commission revenue bonds. We were informed that the Moody's rating should be AA1. But other than that, if there's any questions, there's no other concerns from the review standpoint and no other additions.
Any questions on the consent agenda? So I will entertain a motion for the Charlotte, Eden, Forsyth County, Greenville Utilities Commission, Hendersonville, Merrifield, Oak Island, Pasquotank, Raleigh Housing Authority, Aldersgate, Camden County, and Lumberton matters.
So moved.
Move the consent agenda.
And a second, sorry.
I do have a question since the miscellaneous action is in there. Why is this in front of us? Simply because it's a lesser amount? Or are we doing over 60 million general, are we doing two bonds? I just didn't understand what the analysis said.
Okay, so because it's a private sale, the LGC usually is approving the working group, which is bond counsel, financial advisor, and the rate that is set. If it is a public sale, we wouldn't have the rate because that would have taken place after the whole approval of general obligation bonds. We wanted to make sure that the commission was aware, though, that it is only a partial financing of the project because the project has other funds with the directed grant from the low-income school capital outlay.
So the 31 is not our, we're not voting on that, not our concern, right? Because that's private?
Well, you're actually voting on the method of financing because the voters and the commission previously approved the original $33 million general obligation bond at the time that it was passed.
So we're approving the
rate,
33.
the
The
rate
rate.
and the financing.
Okay. I'm satisfied, thank you.
This is the note.
So we have a motion and a second.
Yeah, I have Burns, I'm sorry, Butler, Hoffman.
Correct. Please call the roll.
Treasurer listed everybody on the consent agenda minus the Duke University Health. Butler, Hoffman. Secretary Marshall. Aye. Auditor Bullock.
Aye.
Secretary Wooten.
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
And Treasurer Briner.
Aye.
Right. Carries.
Thank you. Over to the Duke University Health System matter. Are there any questions or concerns, comments? Entertain a motion for Duke University. Secretary Wood. Is there a second?
Second, Hoffman.
Hoffman for second. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Duke University Health, Wooten Hoffman with Ms. Harvey recusing. Secretary Marshall. Aye. Auditor Bolick.
Aye.
Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Butler.
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Thank you. And Treasurer Reiner.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I would note that we have not had a conduit revenue issuer through the Medical Care Commission in some time at this commission. So we welcome them back and looking forward to future issuers. Let's move to attachment E, and that is the decennial rules review. Decennial review.
Okay. LGC, this is Cindy Aiken, members of LGC. Back in, I believe it was November meeting, we had a similar resolution. So we are in ending phase one, part one of our decennial rules review process. Rules Review Commission asks that the first step is that the body make a determination on the existing rules. Are they necessary or unnecessary? To avoid any mistakes or overlooking anything important, we decided we have them all classified as necessary. The 60-day comment period was ended in early March. And so now this resolution is your final determination that we are categorizing the rules as necessary. That report, which is attached to the your resolution, goes to the Rules Review Commission for their July meeting, and that will be the end of part one. Part two is the re-adoption of all of the LGC rules. That process will be set by in conjunction with Rules Review Commission staff. There will be a plan of targeted dates. This will probably be possibly a 2-year or so process. And we'll do then is a deeper dive with staff, and there's no question that we have some rules that need to be updated. So we may find that some are unnecessary, but we didn't want to jump the gun and inadvertently get rid of something at this stage before really examining everything in detail. We may also be adopting new rules as we discuss and see what's needed. So at this stage, all we're doing is saying Rules Review Commission, we believe our rules are necessary. And then part two comes after. So that's what your resolution is about today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer, I counted these. I think there's 64 of them. Are they bound in sort of any type of book or volume, or do you keep going to all the?
Yes, they are. I will be happy to, we can either provide printed copy or the link. Rules Review Commission's website has all of every agency's rules neatly organized. And this is not even a drop in the bucket to what some agencies have. So
I'm on a small quest about this. We just got our third tranche for the new RENA, remote electronic notarization. And there's over like 400 rules. And everybody talks about the exorbitant excessive number of rules. Well, they make you put one sentence for one rule. So that means we've got 400 sentences in it if we have 400 rules. And that makes it look awful to the public when, you got to read them together but they want one sentence to a rule. So that's what we've got.
Well, some of ours are electronic, what's the one that no need for a, oh, help me, I'm blanking out. Our electronic the stamp. Pre-authorization.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Exemption for the disbursement certificate and the exemption for the pre-audit certificate.
The finance officer's pre-audit certificate. That rule is way more than one sentence, but we did that like 6 years ago, those rules. But we will be calling upon you probably, and maybe we'll have some subcommittees. We'll see how the chair of the board wants to do this. If we need some subcommittees to help just think about, this is a good time to see what rules need to be tweaked and or adopted, so.
I suspect we won't get a lot of volunteers. We might get some conscript folks.
We don't publish them. That's not one of, people have toyed with that, but I've tried to resist.
But anyway, Mr. Butler, you just let me know after if you want. I can give you the link or you can see them all or we'll print them out for you. But it's not quite as many as for.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or concerns before motion here? Entertain
Oh,
any
and
motion.
I'm sorry, I should have said, we did not receive any public comments. If we had, we would have had to address those comments, but no comments were received in that 60-day period. Sorry, I forgot to say.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Wooten, is second.
Second.
Auditor Bollig, please call the roll.
Okay, so for the rules resolution, Wooten and Bullock. Secretary Marshall. Mr. Burns.
Aye.
Mr. Butler.
Aye.
Ms. Harvey.
Aye.
Councilwoman Hoffman. And friend.
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
And Treasurer Sharp.
Aye.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
brother.
So turn it over to Jeff for any other items.
Sure. Glad to be here with you. I was fortunate enough to see the previous secretary walk out. Well, not fortunate to see her walk out, but she walked out with her box at 4 p.m. on Liberation Day. And if anyone knows what happened at 4 p.m. on Liberation Day, the tariff announcement happened. And the markets were roiled. Bond markets and stock markets were roiled for the next 3 weeks. And I'm glad to say that I think the LGC did a great job, and the whole public finance community in North Carolina did a great job on trying to juggle sale dates to try to make sure that everyone could get into the market at a relatively stable time and get their finances done. So kudos to Jennifer and her team, and kudos, I think, to the whole North Carolina public finance community, whether they're bond counsel, FAs, underwriters, to try to work together to solve a common problem.
Thank you. So two things for me before I open it up to anyone else's comments. First, our next meeting is June 3rd, so for that. And then second, at the Council of State this morning, I talked about a policy change at that level to allow refunding of state level bonds to save interest payments. No reamortization, no changing debt amounts, just simply lowering interest rates, which is something that we wouldn't see Council of State approval. I think that is sensible policy to push further down, where we have authorized units to issue debt, to have debt outstanding. I don't think we need to authorize them to lower their interest rate. I think that's unambiguously good, and we should empower that. And so we'll discuss that in more detail next meeting, making a policy change to potentially allow units to do that without our permission. Again, only lowering interest rates, no other changes without our permission. But I think that is sensible policy that will allow people to take advantage of, hopefully, falling interest rates, which we'll see if it happens. So stay tuned for that in June as well. With that, I open the floor to anyone's comments, questions, or otherwise. Okay. Hearing none, how about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Well, second. Secretary Wooten. All the roll.
Marshall.
Amen. Yes, this is a record. It's a record.
Bullock.
Aye.
Burns.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
Philbeck.
Aye.
Reiner.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.
Get out of Butler's way.